This sermon started when I read a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Vietnamese Buddhist monk and one of the most recognized peace activists in the world today. He said, "If while washing the dishes, we think only of the cup of tea that awaits us, thus hurrying to get the dishes out of the way as if they were a nuisance, then we are not washing the dishes. What's more, we are not alive during the time we are washing the dishes. In fact, we are completely incapable of realizing the miracle of life while standing at the sink. If we can't wash the dishes, the chances are we won't be able to drink our tea either. While drinking the cup of tea, we will be thinking of other things, barely aware of the cup in our hands. Thus, we are sucked away into the future, and we are incapable of living 1 minute of life." So this is a sermon about mindfulness to life. I think I often have to remind myself to live in the big moments. I definitely have to do that, like family Christmas, or a children's birthday party, or the first day of school, or work, or retirement. But I want to talk about practicing being mindful to the good in any moment. Mindfulness and gratefulness are muscles that need to be worked until it becomes second nature. When we try to live in each moment, we get better at recognizing the good without taking it for granted. We're also better able to see our struggles as impermanent. Artists, writers, and philosophers have always been the best at expressing these sorts of things, I think. They help us see the common problems of all humanity, and we are going to visit some of these people today and think about what they can teach. Annie Dillard once wrote, "How we spend our days, of course, is how we spend our lives." The more I read and interact with where mindfulness and gratefulness interact, I'm struck by how often people, writers, linger over chores, washing the dishes. Well, even though we act like they're annoyances or not worth our time, they actually define our lives in many ways. How many days and weeks will I spend cleaning my home, my tools, my clothes, to keep them and myself healthy? How much time will I spend feeding myself and all the people around me? It is many. It is many. Do the math. Oh, that's a note to myself. I put that in parentheses. Do the math. I estimate, on average, I spend almost 4 hours a day on the maintenance and upkeep of myself and my family. That's 21% of my day. Every day. That's 21% of my life. Just doing the minimums. This is nothing fancy, just clean and fed, right? It makes sense that we might start to think of these things as daily meditations, daily practice, and it might relate to mindfulness, and then to being grateful that we can devote this time to ourselves. Over 5,000 scientific studies have been done just since 2003 on the role of gratitude in daily life. But people have known that mindfulness is linked to gratitude since ancient times, way before the scientific method existed. I have been reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, a book which was written in the 2nd century AD, when Marcus was Rome's emperor. The Meditations were not meant to be published. They were Marcus's own thoughts, partially a journal, partially him giving himself advice, sometimes giving himself a stern talking to. He didn't think of himself as a philosopher, just a person who read about philosophers. But his work, which was originally titled To Himself, the first time it was published, has endured as a handbook of what we call Stoicism. Part of Stoicism is perceiving actual reality, rather than whatever your mind might tell you might be true. The other part of Stoicism is acceptance of the reality that you find. If we do this well enough, we can avoid and prevent suffering. If this reminds you of Buddhism, you are not wrong. There are fundamental differences between the two. But the idea that most suffering comes from within us is shared, ancient Rome to ancient India. It's not enough to just notice that things are what they are. It's about noticing them and then choosing to either engage with realities or not. Avoid damaging yourself unnecessarily while you choose. Mindfulness isn't just, hey, look at that. It's about understanding the implications, effects, and contexts of what we experience, and hopefully shaping those into something meaningful. Sometimes we may perceive and not react. This holding back represents a powerful choice in how we engage our minds. It's something that both Stoics and Buddhists have seen as important muscles to flex. In ancient times, I do think it was probably somewhat easier to discipline your mind. They did not have Instagram. They didn't. Which means I want to stop here and discuss something I think we need to address, particularly in 2025, which is that we are all losing our ability to focus for extended periods of time. Mindfulness is pretty hard to maintain when you can't read a book for half an hour. A 2023 Time magazine article entitled "Why You Can't Focus Anymore" tried to help quantify what was happening. I'm going to read an excerpt. Distractibility is nothing new. Focus naturally waxes and wanes depending on a lot of factors, from how much sleep you get to how interested you are in the task. But the cocktail of anxieties inherent to modern life can make for a particularly potent drain on our attention. Most people without chronic attention issues could probably focus fairly well if given a task in a quiet, empty room. But they'd probably perform worse if they did the same task in a room where people are talking or music is playing. In modern life, we're essentially living in a room filled with distractions all the time. Thanks to competing demands of work and home life and societal stresses like the pandemic, the constant temptation of phones, social media, and the internet. Screens present a unique minefield of distractibility, and their constant flow of notifications and information is by design. At its core, the internet was designed to capitalize on how humans think, so it's little surprise that people are drawn to it. It's not just the fact that there are algorithms catching your attention. We have a sense that we must respond, we must check. Human brains want novelty and excitement and social connection, and devices play into those desires. Checking a notification flashing on your screen provides a hit of dopamine, creating a sense of reward that keeps you coming back. When you give in to temptation by pausing a task to check your phone, your brain has to shift gears to stop what it was doing and move to a new task. This process negatively affects the overall speed and quality of your work. And the more you engage in task switching, the more your brain wants to wander and look for something new. In other words, your brain gets used to constant diversions and engages in them out of habit, which is why you might find yourself mindlessly checking your phone even as you watch your favorite television show. Research suggests we're giving into digital temptation more than ever. In the early 2000s, her team tracked people while they used an electronic device and noted each time their focus shifted to something new, which was every 2.5 minutes. A recent repeat of that experiment 20 years later says that the average has gone down to 47 seconds. So, no surprise to me here that there's been a real uptick in studying mindfulness, because we can feel ourselves getting less mindful, all the time. Our lives encourage us to respond before we perceive. The Stoics would be very disappointed in us. However, there's another side to the mindfulness coin. Some of you may have jumped ahead of me and asked what I think is a really important question. Well, geez, am I supposed to be mindful all the time? Well, the Harvard Business Review wondered the same thing. I know that we don't want business and corporations to run our lives, but they recently published a study called Where Mindfulness Falls Short, run by researchers in management, behavioral science, and organizational management. It's really interesting bringing together of some different practices. Mindfulness has gone mainstream. To be mindful means to be fully present in the moment, and it is a quality that can be enhanced through a broad set of activities that help us focus on our physical and emotional states. Mindfulness practices like meditation, breathing exercises, other techniques can be applied to anything, from reducing stress and anxiety to quitting smoking, losing weight, resolving conflict, and they've become so popular that more than half of large corporations offer mindfulness training to their employees. For the most part, this popularity is justified. Unlike many managerial fads, mindfulness is supported by a large body of evidence. Research has shown that mindfulness improves how we focus and act. But despite these benefits, we have found that in certain situations, mindfulness has a cost. Specifically, we took a close look at how mindfulness influences performance in a real-world customer service environment. Many service roles are known to be particularly stressful. And while the onus is on the employee to provide a positive work environment, or the employer, a lot could be gained from finding ways to improve mental health. So we surveyed almost 1,700 employees in a variety of roles, including banking, healthcare, finance, sales, and consulting. We assessed their mindfulness and self-control. We also asked them to describe how often they had to fake emotions. Now, why is that? We did find, oh no, hold on, I skipped something. We asked supervisors to rate each employee's job performance and found that employees whose jobs require them to display inauthentic emotions, greater levels of mindfulness lead to lower self-control and lower overall performance. Mindfulness helps us be more effective, but becoming more aware of unpleasant feelings that we have been ignoring can also be uncomfortable and harmful. Mindfulness while completing unpleasant work tasks increases our awareness of negative emotions. We can do our best to craft jobs that bring us a sense of purpose, but there will always be components that don't feel great. And being mindful can raise our awareness to the parts we don't like without helping us fix them. It's called surface acting, is what this is called. It's critical for many customer-facing roles. You fake a smile, right? But displaying inauthentic emotions feels bad. So people adopt a mindless approach while completing these tasks. It's a coping mechanism. If they become more mindful, the unpleasant feelings they had been suppressing, maybe even subconsciously, come out. And so the mental resources needed to get work done get sapped. So their big takeaway is that this surface acting is unpleasant, but deep acting, that is the practice of actually changing how you feel to match the needs, can be a very effective strategy for displaying required emotions without making you feel bad. For example, nurses tasked with unpleasant and tiring work might focus on their patient's experience and imagine the pain and fear that their patients might be feeling, inspiring compassion instead of frustration. Rather than faking a smile, you can help employees genuinely feel more positive emotions, which may be more effective. Interestingly, deep acting, what they called, I'd never read this before I came to this article, it's very interesting. It's not new. Laura Ingalls Wilder actually talked through this concept in 1923. Before she published all those books on 19th century pioneers, she had a recurring newspaper column called As a Farm Woman Thinks. And this essay is called No Small Parts, which deals particularly with the idea of deep acting, even though she didn't call it that. She didn't think of it that way. And I actually think if the researchers had thought a little harder about what they were suggesting, they wouldn't have called it acting either. Wilder said, working in the garden, taking care of the poultry, calves, and lambs, milking the cows, and all the other chores that fall to the lot of farm women may each appear small in itself, but the results go a long way to helping feed the world. Sometimes I try to imagine the people who will eat the eggs I gather, or the butter from my cream, and wear the clothes from the wool of the lambs. Putting up the school lunch for the children or cooking a good meal may seem a very insignificant task compared with giving a lecture or writing a book or doing other things that have a larger audience, but I doubt very much in the ultimate reckoning if they will count as much. If when cooking you think of yourself as a chemist, which you are, combining different ingredients into a food that will properly nourish human bodies, then the work takes on dignity and interest. And surely a family well nourished with healthful food so that the boys and girls grow up strong and beautiful while their elders reach a hale old age is no small thing. This reminds me a lot of what Thich Nhat Hanh said. Many years, many miles, culturally very far apart. But I think these truths can span distances like this with no trouble. Wilder continued, "It belittles us to think of our daily tasks as small, and if we continue to do so, it will make us small. It will narrow our horizon and make our work a drudgery. There are so many little things that are really very great, and when we learn to look beyond the insignificant appearing acts to their far-reaching consequences, we will despise not the day of small things. We will feel dignity and poise from the fact that our everyday rounds are as important as any other work of the world. And just as a little thread of gold running through a fabric brightens the whole garment, our work, while only the doing of little things, like the golden gleam of sunlight, runs through and brightens the fabric of civilization." She was really good at writing. So I find the Harvard guy's term, deep acting, to be really problematic. As Laura reminds us, it's not acting. It's actually finding empathy and compassion for the people and situations and places and things that are around you. To think of it as acting, like she said, it makes us small. It narrows our horizon. It makes our work a drudgery. What they call deep acting is being patient with a knot, being patient with a toddler or a computer. It's finding compassion in someone who seems they want to ruin your day. It's being careful with the chicken breast you're cooking on the stove. It's not acting. It's resetting your mind to stop centering yourself and start centering the beings around you that need your care. And in this way, we start to be truly mindful and then, more importantly, grateful. Now, remembering that Marcus Aurelius was writing to himself, one passage from the Meditations always really strikes me. He wrote it while he was on the campaign trail, war campaign, in modern-day Slovakia on a tribute of the Danube River. His advice to himself: "You are an old man. Stop allowing your mind to be a slave, to be jerked about by selfish impulses, to kick against fate and the present and mistrust the future. People who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought are wasting their time, even when they are hard at work." I love that he's saying that to himself. You're too old to be like this. It's my favorite. It's important to be aware that mindfulness is a discipline you are actually practicing. It is not a thing that happens to you. It is not a thing you have by magic. It takes will and intention. It's a lot like playing a musical instrument. You never finish practicing your craft. I personally have found that mindful gratitude or mindful compassion are easier for me to practice than just mindfulness because I need a direction. Just like Marcus needed a direction, and I think Laura needed a direction. Maybe someday I won't need something to focus on, but for now, I do. Mary Shelley once said, "Nothing contributes so much to tranquil the mind as a steady purpose, a point on which the soul may fix its intellectual eye." Well, what does that look like? How do we find steady purpose, fix our mind's eye on gratefulness? I need a different term, I think, to feel more comfortable with it. Because honestly, sometimes it feels fake to say, I'm practicing gratefulness. It feels inauthentic to me a little bit. But what about empathy practice? What about compassion practice? Robert Wall Kimmerer, who is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, which if you've never read it, I recommend reading it. I avoided reading it for 20 years, but I finally read it and realized it's actually really great. She writes about how nature has continually helped her come back to a thankful mindset. She is a member of the Potawatomi tribe. She's also an ecologist. So nature is really at the forefront of her life, and she regards it as a teacher. She writes about when her youngest daughter went off to college, she went on a canoe trip, and she knew she would need to grieve this loss of her, that stage of her life. But she wanted to avoid wallowing in the sadness. And she says it was the cattails, the water, the wind, the sun that helped her find a little bit of peace when she had to come home to an empty house. Her method of cultivating gratefulness was to immerse herself in the gifts of nature. For me, it was journaling 3 good things. I have always had a tendency to see the bad things first. I am a born pessimist. I am naturally anxious and depressive. Thanks, Dad and Mom. And so my worldview is always tinged with blue. I mean, all the time. But when I finally made the decision, like Marcus, to stop being a slave to my biochemistry, one of the most transformational things for me was writing down 3 good things that happened every single day. Now, if you're like me, you probably thought, that sounds like spitting into the ocean. What if nothing good happened to you that day? Well, let me tell you, it helps. Even if I had a terrible day, lots of things went wrong, the practice of sitting down and forcing myself to consider what went right was very hard and very worthwhile. Maybe my breakfast got burned. At least I got to use that nice plate that I like. Maybe it rained and I missed something, but I got to read a book and the plants all got watered and I didn't have to water them. The constant pressure on myself to find the good in something led me over time to start doing it with other things, more things, and with other people. And now I find myself doing it all the time. When someone complains to me about work, I turn the negative thing over in my mind and I try to respond with the silver lining and how we might still move forward, even in spite of this bad thing. And I really hope this doesn't make me annoying. But I think my ability to find solutions to problems has gotten better. And now I don't automatically assume the sky is falling. I don't add to the drama, add to the stress. It took time, took a long time, took a lot of work. But I consider myself more optimistic and less jaded overall. I still worry all the time. I am working on mindfulness all the time. Being grateful, thankful, empathetic, compassionate, all of those adjectives, it does help me live in the moment far more. The Harvard researchers actually had one other trick up their sleeve for encouraging mindfulness that I thought was very interesting. It's called timing. So because organizations are offering mindfulness breaks, those are useful, but they might be unhelpful if they pull an employee out of surface acting, right? Which people do need to do to help themselves. So instead, perhaps the mindfulness break should happen at the end of the day, offering more of a recovery exercise, a reset from the real time of work stresses. Mindfulness maybe doesn't have to happen in the middle of what you're doing. Maybe it happens at the end when you need a little time to take a break for yourself instead of forcing it upon yourself. Nope, at 2 p.m. every single day I do mindfulness. Got to do it, doesn't matter what. We don't have to be that hard on ourselves, right? My very last little quote before I let you all go to practice your mindfulness, to bring us back to the classics. One last piece of advice from old Marcus, our Stoic emperor. Remember, he was talking to himself. People try to get away from it all. To the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You always wish that you could too, which is idiotic. You can get away from it anytime you like by going within. Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul, especially if you have other things to rely on. A recollection, and there it is, complete tranquility, a kind of harmony. So keep getting away from it all, just like that. Renew yourself. Keep it brief, basic. A quick visit should send you back, ready to face what awaits you. Keep this refuge in mind, the back roads of yourself. Look at things like a man, like a citizen, like a mortal. And among the things you turn to, these two. 1, things have no hold on the soul. They stand unmoving and outside of it. Disturbance comes from within, from our own perceptions. 2, everything you see will soon alter. Think of how many changes you've already seen. The world is nothing but change. Thank you. That's my sermon.